Have you ever had the feeling you're being watched, that the hairs on the back of your neck stand up for no apparent reason? Picture this, a tranquil suburban neighborhood where the only sounds you'd usually hear are the chirping of birds and the laughter of playing children. A typical evening, the setting sun painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. At home, I was nestled comfortably on my couch, engrossed in a riveting novel. The warm, cozy interior of my house was a stark contrast to the chilling events that were about to unfold. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a figure, a man standing outside my house. His presence was eerie, out of place in the peaceful neighborhood. His stillness, his gaze fixated on my house, sent a shiver down my spine. That was the first time I saw him, the man outside my house. He was there, standing in the same place every night, a silhouette beneath the dim streetlight, a figure that seemed as though it was stitched from the very fabric of the night, standing at the edge of my property. He was a nondescript man, if you could even call him a man. His features were obscure, hidden beneath the cloak of darkness, but what was evident was his unwavering fixation on my home. His appearances quickly became a nightly ritual. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, ominous shadows across the landscape, he would emerge. Like clockwork, he would stand there beneath the dim streetlight, as still as the night around him. The first few nights, I dismissed it as a coincidence. Perhaps he was just a passerby, lost in thought. But as the nights wore on, his existence outside my house became a horrifying consistency. His silent vigil, a haunting reminder of my growing isolation. He never moved, never made a sound, just stood there, watching. His presence, a lurking menace, casting a chilling pall over my once safe haven. My home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a stage, and I, an unwilling performer under his relentless scrutiny. The fear started to creep in slowly, like a fog rolling in from the sea. It seeped into the cracks of my home, whispering in the silence of the night, echoing in the hollow spaces. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by long, restless nights spent staring at the man-shaped shadow beneath the streetlight. Strangely, I never saw him arrive or leave. He was just there, one moment a vacant space, the next a looming figure. It was as if he was a part of the night itself, a phantom conjured by the darkness. My home was my fortress, a barrier between me and the world outside, but his presence, his constant surveillance, was a chilling reminder of the fragility of my safety. The walls of my house, once impenetrable, now felt as vulnerable as glass. I thought I was safe inside my house until one night something changed. The man was no longer outside, he was inside my house. A shiver ran down my spine as I stepped over the threshold. Something was amiss. The air felt heavier, tainted with the scent of a stranger, an intruder. The silence of my home was punctured by a chilling draft, whispering the tale of a window left slightly ajar. As I moved further into my sanctuary, my heart pounded louder in my ears with each step. The familiar became unfamiliar. The cozy living room, usually bathed in the soft glow of the evening sun, now felt cold and alien. The cushions on the sofa were not as I left them. The books on the coffee table were askew. The little details were off, just enough to send a wave of dread washing over me. A fear, primal and raw, gripped me. The sanctity of my home had been violated, my safe haven breached. I felt like a stranger in my own house, walking on eggshells, terrified of what I might find next. I made my way to the kitchen, my heart in my throat. There, the reality hit me harder. The cupboards were ajar, the silverware drawer half open. He had been here. He had touched my things, rummaged through my life. The realization was a punch to the gut. The man who had been lurking outside my house, the man who had been watching me, had finally made his move. He had stepped out of the shadows and into my world. As I stood in the eerie silence of my violated home, the dread coiled tighter in my stomach. The man was no longer an outsider. He was an intruder, a violator, a threat. He was no longer just the man outside my house. He was the man inside my house. But the true horror was yet to come. It was not the intrusion that terrified me the most. It was the message he left behind. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I read the words scrawled on a scrap of paper in a handwriting that was not mine. It was cryptic, a chilling jigsaw puzzle of letters and words that made no sense on the surface, yet instilled a profound sense of dread deep within me. The message was unsettling in its ambiguity. It was as if someone had taken my deepest fears, my most private thoughts, and twisted them into a haunting riddle. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to decipher the meaning hidden within the jumbled words. Each word seemed to pulse with a life of its own. each letter a veiled threat that whispered of ominous things to come. The fear was palpable, a living entity that filled the room, wrapping its icy tendrils around me, squeezing the breath from my lungs. My mind raced, a whirlwind of panic and confusion. I was trapped in my own home, a prisoner to the terror that had seeped into every corner, every crack. The more I stared at the message, the more it seemed to change, to morph before my eyes. The letters twisted and contorted, weaving a tale of danger and despair. I could feel the presence of the intruder still lingering, his energy imprinted on the scrap of paper, his essence seeping into the very walls of my home. A sudden realization washed over me, a wave of icy terror that threatened to drown me in its depths. The message was not just a warning or a threat, it was a declaration, a promise that the night was far from over, that the worst was yet to come. The fear that had been a constant companion since the intrusion intensified, swirling around me like a dark and stormy tempest. The message had done its job. It had unsettled me, unnerved me, left me on the precipice of terror. I was not alone. He was still there, hiding somewhere in my house. The game of cat and mouse had begun, and the cat was closing in. The terror I felt was a living, breathing thing, wrapping its icy tendrils around my heart. Every creaking floorboard, every gust of wind rattling against the window panes seemed to echo the relentless pursuit of the man who was always just one step behind me. As I darted through the labyrinthine corridors of my own home, the familiar spaces felt distorted, like a nightmarish reflection of a place I once knew. The walls seemed to close in around me, the darkness pressing down like a suffocating weight. The sense of being hunted, of being prey, was overwhelming. But fear, it seems, has a way of sharpening the senses. My mind raced, a frantic scramble for escape routes and hiding places. I darted into the study, a room filled with a lifetime of books and memories, and barricaded the door with a heavy bookshelf. I could hear the man's footsteps approaching, a slow, deliberate rhythm that sounded like a death knell in my ears. I moved to the window, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. The night outside was pitch black, the world swallowed by an unfathomable darkness. My fingers fumbled with the latch, a desperate prayer on my lips, and then with a burst of adrenaline I was outside, the cool night air a stark contrast to the stifling terror inside the house. But the man was relentless. I could hear him behind me, his footfalls echoing my own. I ran, my legs burning with exertion, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The world blurred around me, the darkness and fear melding into one terrifying entity. And then, just as I thought I was about to collapse from sheer terror, I saw it. A glimmer of light in the distance, a beacon in the engulfing darkness. I ran towards it, my last shred of hope. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't a light at all. It was a reflection, a mirror. And in it, I saw not the man chasing me, but myself. My own fear reflected back at me, a chilling revelation. Just when I thought I had lost him, I stumbled upon a shocking truth. The man was not a stranger, I knew him. A shiver of recognition ran through me, a cold hand upon my heart. He was not merely a face in the crowd, but a ghost from my past, a specter of darkness I had hoped to never encounter again. I could see him now, not as the ominous figure lurking outside my home, but as the man I once knew. His features, once familiar, were now distorted by time and a haunting intent I could not yet comprehend. It was a chilling revelation, one that made my blood run cold and my breath hitch in my throat. We were not strangers. Our paths had crossed before, in a time less fraught with fear. But now, he stood outside my house, a chilling reminder of a past I thought I had left behind. But why was he here? And what did he want from me? To be continued.